Hello and welcome to another Overlord Ainz Skeleton Knight lore video, and today we are going to focus on something very specific, namely how Ark has solved a dangerous hostage situation and gained the trust of a formerly hostile or at least isolationist and mistrusting elf warrior, and how Ainz would have handled the situation. But before we're going to do so, let me thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Thanks guys. Now first and foremost, let's have a look at what Ark did. Well, Ark did the right thing. He followed the elf warrior. He let her fight against the kidnappers, and only after it became evident that the kidnappers threatened the life of the elf hostages, Ark acted, since he had the skills to stop the hostage taker. And as soon as the leader lowered his sword, Ark teleported behind him and flung the enemy into a nearby tree, thus allowing the elf warrior to continue fighting. And now that we know what Ark did, let's see what Ainz would have done. Simply speaking, Ainz could have attempted the same thing, teleporting behind the enemy, saying it's nothing personal and then wreaking havoc. Or he could just use mass hold species to simply keep all of them from moving. Or he could just have used a protection spell on the elves. But let's assume this isn't an option, and resurrection isn't either. Then Ainz could have still solved the situation with just a different approach. The reason why the elf warrior was susceptible to the kidnappers taking hostages in the first place was because it had been clear to the enemy that the potential hostages were of value to the attacker and therefore could be used as leverage. Ainz here, even if he was in the place of the elf warrior, could just have acted as a third party, as an undead wanting to kill all trespassers. He could have even addressed the elves as more unwanted witnesses, and thus requiring a harsher treatment of the human trespassers for assembling so many potential strong spellcasters. This would communicate that the life of the potential hostages have no value to the aggressor, and therefore it's better to either fight or flee. Alternatively, and this is even more drastic, Ainz could launch a first strike, killing some of the guards and nearly killing the elves, before again proceeding to attack, thereby not telling but showing that the elf hostages meant nothing to him. But how would Ainz handle the situation if he wasn't able to salvage the situation, if the enemy not only has hostages, but firmly believes in the value of them, threatening to halt any hostile action, or else the kid would die? Well, Ainz actually had to deal already with this situation, namely in the 12th novel. A goat man had taken a human child as hostage on a tower, in clear view of the paladin forces Ainz currently had accompanied. And while they halted their attack on the enemy encampment, on the enemy prisoner camp, this showed that the hostage had value to them. But luckily for the allied paladin army, Ainz did what any knowledgeable Dungeons and Dragons player would have done to salvage this highly delicate situation. He simply casted Fireball, not to scare the enemy with a near miss, but to fry the hostage and its holder alive, thereby sacrificing one hostage to save the lives of many, and communicating that showing up with a hostage in clear view gets you nothing but a fireball spell directly to your head, burning you alive, and thus making it pretty clear that you not only can't leverage your hostages, but that now that the paladins were again able to attack, they didn't even have time to kill the other hostages still held captive, because now they need to defend themselves. So by simply refusing further negotiations with the enemy, and thereby not validating and rewarding the very behavior that you wanted to end, the enemy were actually forced to change strategies, since being fried alive isn't a good outcome for them. And this is also an important lesson I have taken from Overlord. Sometimes there are no good options. There's a bad option and a worse option. and by not taking the bad one, or even worse, by actively opposing it for the sole reason of it not being perfect, it leads you to the choosing of the worst option, not because you want the worst possible outcome, but because you simply refuse to act. But still, in a sense, Ainz also failed, because he tried to gain the trust of Remedios Custodio, the virtuous, lawful good head paladin of the Holy Kingdom, who of course did oppose the bad option. Simply because it was not perfect. Her rigid moral code held nothing but contempt for Ainz, because he was an undead and because he didn't manage to save all of the hostages. Which, by the way, she also couldn't do. But an outcome less than perfect was seen as a sole failure of Ainz under these circumstances, while her own hesitance and her enemy-rewarding behavior was not seen as her fault by Remedios herself, but as the fault of the enemy, who just shouldn't have taken hostages in the first place. And while Remedios Custodio's hesitance to storm the fortified prisoner camp would have ultimately doomed not only the many prisoners within, but also the Liberation Army and thereby the Holy Kingdom, she still couldn't bring herself to break with her virtues. But Nea, on the other hand, not only had taken the lesson to the heart, but also to other people's heads. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Dash Dash Dash, Bad Guy Yi, Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Mervek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Patty Phantom, Personage, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.